למען החי ורעי, למען החי ורעי, אדם בנה, אתה בנה, שלום לך.
Hello. Today we discussing Parsha Matot Masei. As every Parsha in the Torah, it carries a number of different topics, a number of different messages. So the short content of it is as follows. Moshe conveys the laws governing the annulment of vows to the children of Israel. First, he conveys them to the heads of the tribes of Israel, and they convey it to the people. They wage a war against the Midian, specifically for their role in plotting the moral destruction of Israel. And the Torah gives a detailed account of the war spoils, which they got as a result of the victory, and how they were allocated amongst the people, the warriors and the people staying behind, and the Levites and the high priest. The tribes of Reuben and Gad come over to Moshe and ask for permission to take possession of the lands east of the Jordan River, which is what they conquered, as their portion of the promised land. Why? Because the pastures in there were extremely good for their cattle, and they were cattle people. They were farmers, cattle farmers. Moshe was initially very angered by this request, but subsequently he agrees on the condition that they will be the first to join and lead the people of Israel in their conquest of the lands west of Jordan, which belong to Canaan, to the tribes of Canaan, and they will conquer them and will take possession of the land of Israel. Then the Parsha lists the 42 journeys and encampments of Israel during the Exodus, starting from Exodus and to their encampment in the plains of Moab across the river from the land of Canaan. The boundaries of the promised land are given and defined, and then the concept of and cities of refuge are designated, and these cities were Levite cities and saved as havens and places of exile for people who were involved in accidental murder. And then in the Parsha we learn that the daughters of Zelophehad marry within their own tribes of Menashe, so that there will be no confusion with the estate, because they inherited the land and then it goes to the husband. So the husband must be from the same tribe, Menashe, so there is no confusion. And so that the lands will not pass to another tribe from another state or province, basically. Now, that's basically the content. But what I would like to do is to share with you some ideas which I found in articles of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. And I think they are very profound ideas, and they are very pertinent and very important for us to understand, particularly today, taking into consideration what is taking place in the Middle East right now. The long 40 years journey is nearing its conclusion. The Jordan River is in front of them, within their sight, and the Torah in Numbers 33, 1 to 49 sets out an extended list of stages of the Israelites' route through the journeys, the 42 journeys and encampments, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. The whole text, when you read it, sounds very prosaic. They journeyed from X to and encamped at Y, and over again from this place to that place, and the places basically don't mean to us much anyway. But the effect is to heighten the tension and increase anticipation. These journeys are not only physical journeys in geography in the desert. These journeys are the journeys of our own development, of children of Israel development, of their understanding, perception, and their souls as the nation of the priests. Don't forget that. This is pure Kabbalah. And I'm not going into that right now, but I want you to keep that in mind as well. So, finally, the list draws to a close of all the 42 journeys and encampments. And God tells Moshe, take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have given it to you, this land to possess. It's stated in this parsha, chapter 33, pasuk 53. This, according to Nachmandis, is the source of the command to dwell in the land of Israel and to inherit it. With this, we come to one of the central contradictions in Judaism and Jewish history. The religion's significance of the land of Israel is clearly stated, and it cannot be doubted. And we know that Jewish history begins with Abraham and Sarah and their journey to the land of Israel. That's the first journey. Then there is Exodus, Shemot, to Deuteronomy, to Devarim, and they are again the journeys taken up with Jewish people to the land of Israel in the days of Moshe, which is the second journey. Then Tanakh as a whole ends with Cyrus, king of Persia, granting permission to the Jews exiled into Babylon to return back to their land, and this is the third great journey. But there is a paradox. The paradox of Jewish history is that through a specific territory, the Holy Land is at its heart. Yes, fine. Jews have spent more time in the exile than in Israel, in reality. More time longing for the land of Israel than dwelling in it. More time traveling than arriving to the destinations. Much of Jewish history could be written in the language of this parsha, Matot Masei. The journey from X to encampment at Y, and in other words, this is the story of the wandering Jews. On the other hand, monotheism, as we understand it, God is everywhere. He is not territorial. He exists everywhere. So the God is everywhere, can be found anywhere. So he is not confined to his people or to specific place, as idol worshippers believe in their gods, which are in specific places and has got some physicalities and appearances. Our God exercises his power even in Egypt. He sends a prophet, Jonah, to Nineveh, to Assyria. He is with another prophet, Ezekiel, in Babylon. There is no place in the universe where he is not. On the other hand, it must be impossible to live fully as a Jew outside Israel. For if it's not, then Jews would not have been commanded to go there initially, or to return subsequently all the time. And we wouldn't be saying next year in Jerusalem every year. Why is God beyond place to be found specifically in this place? There is a contradiction. If God is everywhere, why he should be specifically in this place, in the land of Israel, Jerusalem, there, in that specific geographical location? The sages formulated this tension into incredible propositions. On the one hand, wherever the Israelites went into the exile, the divine presence was exiled with them. It's stated in Mechelta, in Bo 14, in a number of places. On the other hand, one who lives in Israel and if he leaves Israel, this is as if he had no God at all. That's what is stated in Ketubot. Can you imagine? On one hand, God is everywhere, and on the other hand, if a Jew leaves Israel, this is as if he had no God at all. So the question is, can one find God, serve God, experience God outside of the Holy Land? What's the answer? Yes or no? If the answer was only yes, there would be no incentive to return back to Israel. You can have Jewish experience and be a Jew anywhere. There is no specific requirement to be in the land of Israel. If the answer is no, then there will be no reason to stay Jewish in exile. So if the Jew is a Jew only in the land of Israel, how can he be Jewish being in exile? There's no reason in that case. And on this paradox, the Jewish existence is actually built. What then is special about Israel? In the Kuzari, Judah Halevi says that different environments have different ecologies. What he says is just as there are some countries, climates and soils particularly suited for specific wines to grow specific types of grapes, so there is a country, Israel, particularly suited to growing prophets. Indeed, it's a whole divinely inspired people, to grow spiritual people. That's what Judah Halevi says. No other place shares the distinction of the divine influence as much as this place. Just as no other mountain, he says, produces such good wine as some specific mountain somewhere where they're growing grapes of very expensive and good wine. Read the Kuzari 9:12. Nachmanides gives a different explanation. He says that the land of Israel is in the middle of the inhabited earth, is the inheritance of God. He has set us apart from all the other nations, over those nations he appointed princes and other celestial powers by giving us the land of Israel, so that he, God, blessed be he, will be our God, and we will be dedicated to his name. It means he is the king over us directly. I can hear the arguments. Yes, every land and every nation is under the overarching sovereignty of God, but only Israel is ruled directly by him. Others are ruled by intermediaries, earthly and heavenly. Their fate is governed by other factors. Only in the land and people of Israel do we find a nation's fortune and misfortunes directly attributable to their relationship with God. Judah Halevi and Nachmanides both expound that we might call mystical geography. The difference between them is that Judah Halevi looks to earth and Nachmanides looks to heaven. For Judah Halevi, what is special about the land of Israel is its soil, its landscape, its climate, the fact that the water is falling from heaven, not flooded by the river from below. For Nachmanides, it is its direct governance by God. Rebbe Sachs says the following: for both of them, religious experience is possible outside Israel, but it is a pale shadow of what it is in the land. Brilliant. Is there a way of stating this in not mystical or spiritual way? In the concepts and categories which would be explainable easier? I will attempt to do that. Here is one way of doing it. The Torah is not merely a code of personal perfection. It is the framework for construction of a society, a nation, a culture. It contains welfare legislation, civil law, rules governing employer-employee relationships, environmental provisions, rules of animal welfare, public health, government, and judicial systems. The Torah stands at the opposite end of the spectrum of Gnosticism and other world-denying philosophies, atheism, etc. They see religion as an ascent to the soul of the eternal realms of the spirit. It's only the spiritual aspect of it. We see it much more than that. God lives here on earth, in human lives, interactions and associations. The Torah is terrestrial because God seeks to dwell on earth. Thus, we Jews have a task to create a society with the divine presence amongst us. Yeah, I was saying it before. We are the maintenance workers. Had Judaism been confined to matters of only spirit, it would have left vast aspects of human life unaddressed. The entire realms of politics, economics, psychology, outside religious sphere. What was and still is unique to Israel is that it is the sole place on earth where Jews have had the chance to create an entire society on Jewish lines, based on Jewish law, on the law of the Torah. It is possible to live a Jewish life in Manchester, New York, Madrid, Minsk, or Sydney, or Melbourne. It doesn't matter. Yes, you can. But it's this life, our life in exile, in any other city outside the land of Israel, is truncated, limited. It's a truncated and limited experience. Only in Israel do Jews conduct their lives in the language of the Bible, within time defined by the Jewish calendar and space saturated in Jewish history. Only there do they form a majority. It's their land, it's their country. Only there they have been able to construct a political system and economy and an environment on the template of Jewish values. There alone can Judaism be what it is meant to be. Not just a code of conduct for individuals, but also and essentially the foundation of the society. There must be some space on earth where Jews practice self-government under divine sovereignty. But why Israel specifically? Because it was and is a key strategic location where three continents, Europe, Africa, and Asia, meet. It lacks a flat and fertile space of the Nile Delta, or the Tigris and Euphrates valleys, or today the oil fields of the Arab world. It lacks all of this. It could never be the base of an empire, but because of its location, it was always desired by the empires. So it was always politically vulnerable. And it is ecologically vulnerable as well. Because the water resources are very limited. It's dependent on the rain, which in that part of the world is never very predictable, hence all the famines which we are told about in the Torah, in Genesis. Its existence could never be taken for granted. And time again, it's people surviving one challenge after another. With experience, this is with many experiences which are miracles. The small geography and small demography, because there are very few Jews comparing to everybody else. It would depend on outstanding achievement in every respect, political, military, and economic, on the part of the people of Israel. This would depend in turn on their morale and sense of mission. And that's why the prophets knew, naturally as well as supernaturally, that without social justice and a sense of divine participation, the nation would eventually fall and suffer exile again. These are the foundations of the mysticism of Halevi and Nachmanides. They are as true today as they were in their time, in the ancient times. There is a directness and natural feel of Jewish experience in Israel that can be found nowhere else. The history tells us that the project constructing society under divine sovereignty in a vulnerable land is the highest of the highest risks there could be. And it has got very high risk strategies. Yet across 40 centuries, Jews knew that risk, and they were confident that it's worth taking. For only in Israel, God is close to us. You can feel Him. I've been there. I felt it. You can feel Him in the sun and in the wind. You can sense Him just beyond the hills. Hear Him in the inflections of everyday speech. Breathe His presence in the early morning air, and live dangerously but confidently under the shadow of His wings. I will never forget that morning in the Arava desert, which I had, where you could feel God there. It does not matter who, when, or how threatens Israel. Hashem said that He will never abandon His children. And that means Jews, Israel, Jerusalem will always stand with their head high on their land, the land of Israel. Thank you very much. On this note, we finishing the 4th book of Moshe. And the next parsha is the Devarim, and which is the name of the book, Devarim, the 5th book of the Torah. I will see you there and then. Thank you. Goodbye.
למען בית השם אלוקינו